Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, Dr. Shende. Welcome, Wesley. All right, guys. So we are doing digital archaeology today, and we have as our guest Dr. Anil Shende from the Computer Science Department program, who has been, he and Dr. Bouchard and myself have been working on the lab and the exercises that you are going to be doing today. So Dr. Shende has graciously agreed to come in and talk to us and maybe start us out with a little bit of the computer sciencey perspective of things before we run into, just roll through it. But before I turn over to Dr. Shende, and thank you for joining us, I do want to start with a few announcements. I've started grading your fictional archaeology papers. I'm a little over half done. Please note that the line edits are the minor point. Whenever I give you feedback, the line edits on the paper are minor. They're important, but they're less important. The major stuff is the text edits that I enter in the sidebar through Turnitin. So if you can't access those or you're wondering where they are, contact me, we'll find them together. But you're getting global revisions there, and those are the big changes you should be making if you decide to do a mastery paper. So please make sure to check those out. I'm hoping to have them done by tomorrow would be my goal so that everybody has good turnaround time. I also sent out the format for exam 2. It's exactly like exam 1. Like I actually cut and pasted the format and then just changed the questions 1 through 6. Are there any questions for me about exam 2? All right, you're all gonna rock it, right? That's what I just heard resoundingly, enthusiastically. Yes, archaeology, I am going to just rock it. All right, well then with that, Dr. Shende, shall I turn it over to you? Does that sound like a plan?
Sure. All right. So I guess you're working on trying to keep track of variety of data, and you want to do it in the best possible, most efficient way as best as possible. So imagine that you are traveling, and so you're on a trip for a month long all over Europe, and you're going to various places, and you want to keep track of where you've been, how you got there, uh, what date it was, and so on. What might you do? Well, you might write a diary, and you have a date and you write all this information. But ultimately, you know that a year from now or 2 years from now, what you want really to get out of this is to, well, let's say, figure out how many days did you spend in London. So you could go back to your diary and look at that. It'll be harder for you to parse through all that you have written to figure out what days you were there and so on. Um, so, what other format could you write this down? So, can I, am I able to share my screen? Okay. So, let's say that you decided you're going to keep a table. So, you're going to make a table of some sort. You want to say what date, how you got there, what was the place, um, what specific site did you visit, and maybe you have some comments that you made about that site. And so you said maybe something like June 1st, 2018, you got there by train, and this was London. You were in some site, let's call it A, and you made some comments about that. And then on the same day, you got there by bus, still in London. You went to place B, you made some comments. Okay, well, now you're getting tired of doing this over and over again. So you decide, all right, the same day. So the same day went by bus, and again, it was in London, someplace C, and so on. Okay. Um, and then you say the next day, Well, I already know it's June, so I'm now getting even sloppier. So I say, yeah, it was the second in 2018. I also know it's 2018, so never mind the 2018. June 2nd, I went by again, let's say by a taxi. I'm still in London, some other place, and so on. Okay. And then, yes, the same day you went again by something else, let's say again by taxi in London, and so on and so forth. Now, imagine that this in your book, notebook gets long, and so you turn the page. And now you're writing things like this. Okay. Now, 2 years hence, you go back and look at your notes, and you are now on page 3, and you say, well, okay, I don't know what this means. So you go back to look at, okay, that was the date, and then which date was it? So now you try to calculate and so on. You see
Dr.
how
Shinde, can
hard
I
it can
interrupt
get?
you for a second?
Sure.
I want to make sure that you all see from the beginning the archaeological applicability of this, because he is basically describing my field notes right now. Unquestionably, this is what archaeologists do when they're keeping field diaries. So it's not, he's not using archaeological data, but this is absolutely, we work through tables in this class all the time. We've talked through the sloppiness of record keeping all the time. So these have really hardcore archaeological applicability. Don't lose that through this discussion. Sorry, Dr. Shinde, I just wanted to
That's
make
all right.
sure to tie it in.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay. So it's going to get hard to try to figure out now if I wanted to, how many days did I spend in London? So that's one aspect. This other aspect is, what if you also had a friend who was also keeping track of similar data on the same trip, except your friend decided to use a slightly different format. Instead of saying June 1, 2018, the friend decided to call it day 1, day 2, and so on. Okay. Because you know at that time when you're traveling, you know the dates. You say, I don't really need the dates, I just need day 1, day 2. But again, 2 years from now, you want somebody asks you, what's a good time to travel to London? And you say, well, I was there in, and then you start looking back. And now, if you have day 1 and day 2, you don't know what month it was when you were there. Okay. So, if you were to correctly do this so that it would be easier for you to figure out uh, these sorts of questions later, you would have first decided between you and your friend what format to use for each day. And then when you wrote it down, you wouldn't have used these things. You would have actually wrote down everything as you went along. So that when you went to page 2 and 3 and 4, you could still tell what date it was. Okay. So let's say you did all this and you actually had written down everything appropriately. Now, do you see how we are going to be writing this June and the date and the year multiple times? Well, the more times we write it, the easier it is to make mistakes. And this particularly can happen more and more if you're typing this data. Typographical mistakes of this sort can very easily go unnoticed. And you say, yeah, so what's the big deal? Instead of June, you wrote Jun, okay, instead of June. So now imagine that this was actually all typed in. And this is what essentially a spreadsheet, or what you are using, Excel, that's a spreadsheet. That's what it looks like. It has columns for the various things. You decide what the columns mean, each of them, and you type in your data under those columns. Now, if you wanted to search in this and say, where all did I go on June the 3rd? What would you do? Well, you would do a search because Excel allows you to do that. And you would say, find me all the places where it says June 3rd 2018 in this spreadsheet. But remember, you might have typed June 3rd, 20 times because you visited 20 places, and some places you type JUN, some places you correctly type JUNE, some places maybe you even by mistake typed J and U both capital letters. Okay. So now you say, let me search for June 3rd, 2018. And so you type in your search, just like your Google search bar or something of that sort, you type in the search, I want to know where I was June 3rd, 2018. But now remember, this is a computer doing the search. So it is going to do a very, very literal search. It is going to search for exactly this pattern. It doesn't care about whether it's June or July or whatever it may be. It's going to look for exactly that pattern, including upper and lower case, which means this search that you did is going to miss out on this, it's going to miss out on this. And so now you have some answer, but not necessarily a correct answer. In fact, it is so literal that even if you were to mistype, say here in the search, I'll indicate that as a space, but if you mistype this to be two spaces, whereas here everywhere you had one space after the month, it's going to miss out all of those days because it is a very, very literal search, looking for exactly the pattern you asked it to look for. Well, how can we avoid this to a certain extent? The reason this sort of thing happened is because we had to type that over and over and over again. That is redundant. Could we get away with typing less than that? So there's less chance of making mistakes. So think about why your friend would have chosen day one, day two. And in fact, if this is, we know this is the day, I didn't even have to write day at all. We could have just said one and two. But we know what the problem with that is. If we solve the problem of mistyping, because there's less we are typing, we're just typing a one or a two or a three or something of that sort. But we have lost the information about what date it actually was. But so what if you sort of had all this typed in along with another little table that you make that says this day corresponds to this date. So you have day one, you have day two, you have day three, and now this is June 2nd, 2018, or first, whatever it was. This is June 2nd, 2018, and so on. And now what you had to type in here was none of this. You could simply have typed 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, whatever that may be. And far less chance of now making errors. Okay. Could have done the same thing with the place. Instead of having to type London so many times, and hence now getting tired of it and writing this, we could have assigned each of the cities we went to numbers. Again, a different little table that we make where we say, let's say city number and city. And then one might have been London, and then you went to Paris, then you went to Rome, and so on. And then again, this would have looked like 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, whatever that may be. Okay. Now, instead of looking at just one place, though, now you have to go back and look at three places. You have this table that you've made, a big table, because you went to lots of places. You have to look at then this table, and you have to look at this table. Nonetheless, all these tables are tied together in that day here means the day here as well. And similarly, the place here, or city number, as we called it, this thing, is the same as this city number. So there is some sort of a relationship between this table and each of these. hard for us to keep track of if this becomes 5 or 6 or even 20 different tables, but very easy to keep track of for a computer, where you specifically explain to the computer what the relations are. And what do I mean by explain? You simply essentially can use the same name that you're using in the different tables, and that's even adequate for the computer to make the connection between those two tables. And now, when you say, I want to know which days I was in London, the computer can look at this table, say, London is city number one. So it goes to this table, the big table, figures out what city number one is, where all you went in city number one and which days, because that's what the days are, and then goes back to the other table to figure out what dates you were in London. Okay, hard for us to do, but very easy for the computer to do, particularly if it has just like a spreadsheet, which is single tables typically, it could be more, but typically single tables, just like a spreadsheet, if instead it has a database management system. There are several of these, and the one that I particularly pointed out just now with multiple tables and relations between them, that's called a relational database management system because it uses the relationships between tables. So that's the reason why when you have large amounts of data, which you have very often, even for things like your travels, um, you might want to store it either as a spreadsheet, depending on what kind of data you have, but as it grows big, spreadsheets are not that efficient as a relational database management system can be. It is written to be efficient. So you might want to use one of those instead. Okay. Now, as Dr. Warden was pointing out, the data I used was travels, but it looks very much like archaeological data. This is actually true of pretty much any data that you talk about. You might talk about, let's say, in a county, you are looking at households with the number of people in there and the annual income, the size of the house, how many kids there are, and so on and so forth. It's just data with different things in it. Those things are called attributes. So every piece of data, which in this example for a county and households, one piece of data is all the data for a household. And it has different attributes. That data entry has number of kids, that's one of the attributes. Size of the house might be another attribute. Annual income for the household might be another attribute, etc. Anytime you have data, it has attributes. Those attributes can have meaningful relationships between them. And that's what a relational database management system allows you to express. The database management system itself is written so that it is more efficient when you, for example, do searches. So if you said, I want to know where all, or I want to know what dates I was in London, it's going to do a search on on this table looking for London, but that search is going to be extremely efficient. Now, what does that mean? Well, it just means that the number of times the computer has to go and compare where the pattern London with what is stored in the table is reduced. There are multiple ways of going through doing the searches. Computers are designed, or algorithms, programs on computers are designed to try to use the best possible way. Consider this. You have a phone directory, a printed phone directory. I don't know how many of you have seen one. They don't exist anymore. But, or let's look at a dictionary. Actually, I don't know how many of you have seen a dictionary, a printed one. Okay, let's look at a dictionary, a printed one. and you want to find the meaning of a word. Okay.
Anna, nice.
Okay.
She's holding
So
up a dictionary.
so you want to find the meaning of a particular word. Let's say the word zebra. You want to find the meaning of zebra. One possible way is to start at the first page, look at every word, see if it's zebra, and keep going all the way until you get to zebra. Okay. Um, well, you'll find zebra eventually. It'll probably take you a very long time. Okay. Here's another possible way. What if you open the middle of the dictionary somewhere, and let's say the first word that you see on that page starts with an M. Now, you know that dictionaries are sorted, the words are sorted alphabetically. So if the first word on the page that you open starts with an M, you know that the first half of the dictionary is pointless. The word zebra is not going to be in there. It's going to be in the second half of that dictionary. So now you can open the middle of the second half and look at the word there. Let's say it is an S. The first word starts with an S. Now you know the word is going to be in the second half of that half. A far more efficient searching mechanism. So computers will use that kind of a search as opposed to what is called as a linear search, which is you go one word at a time, all the way until you find the word you're looking for. Database management systems are written to do those kinds of searches. You also sort of help them by telling them that in this table, I have this key city, and every item in that column will appear only once because you know that. You couldn't have said city number 4 is also London. That would have been pointless, right? So every item appears only once. Having said that, it will store this information appropriately for you so that searches can be faster. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. Um, the format that you store things in, again, also becomes sort of a fixed kind of standard so that multiple people who are working on some project that you're working on, storing data for that project, could access that data without having to ask you, what does this mean? Because you now have a fixed format that everybody is aware of, and the data is stored in that database, you have access to it, and you can simply access that data. Moreover, if your data is very large and has all kinds of attributes, which is very likely in most cases, that each data item has about 50 attributes, 50 different things that you're storing for each data item. Well, maybe you are concerned only with 3 of those attributes, not all 50. Then database management systems will allow you to look at only those 3 attributes so that what you're looking at is not cluttered with all these 50 attributes that you don't care about. You look at only those 3. Okay. If you are looking at your notebook, there's no way for you to just sort of bring it down to those 3. You would be looking at that entire sheet that you've written out. Okay.
Can I add to that, Dr. Shinde, real quick?
Sure.
Do you guys remember working with Petrie's tables? Remember how long we spent plowing through that and how counterintuitive it felt? It's because Petrie was building multiple tables with relationships before there were databases. And so we were throwing ourselves into trying to interpret one data-rich table that really required that you understood several other pieces of data and other tables that were ensconced elsewhere, sometimes in other publications. So this type of thinking has been around for a long time, but the technical utility to be able to search it so effectively, to be able to have the computer do that work that you guys have struggled to do is relatively new to us. So again, I just want to stress that this is actually not outside of your wheelhouse at all, nor is it outside of what you've already experienced. We're just able to take it to the next level because we live in 2021.
Okay. Well, Veri, if you have any questions.
And let me encourage you to ask questions because you have the specialist in front of you. We're going to work through Excel. We're going to work through Airtable. We're going to do this ourselves. But concepts, Dr. Shende is going to be able to help you with the most.
What are some common mistakes that you see in students like us make?
That's a very broad question. Can you be a little more specific? Common mistakes with respect to what?
Database entry when we don't have any, well, maybe some of us do, but computer science background.
Okay. So one of the most common mistakes you see, unfortunately in industry as well, is not designing databases well. So there is this notion of a database being what is called as normalized. What a normalized database design, that is what tables are you going to actually use? So a normalized database design ensures that you do not have duplicate data and that making a change in one of the tables does not affect any other table negatively. If your database is not designed well, then your data can suffer from both these problems. And oftentimes what you see is people designing the database badly, trying to do something of this sort that causes problems, and then in their own programs which are using the database, trying to correct those problems. So let's say I designed such a database. I found there was a mistake in the database, but now I don't want to fix it. I'm going to write my program to correct whatever the problem was. So what I wrote perhaps gives correct answers. And then I say, okay, now this database anybody can use, and you go to try to use it and it doesn't work because you're not using my program, which is trying to correct things that I should have corrected in the first place. Right? That is, I think, the most common mistake is not taking the time to plan out and design databases well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
You're all just raring to go because remember, data management, database design is at the heart of everything we looked at on Tuesday or on Monday. Absolutely everything. All right. Well, Dr. Shende, thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful.
So they're going to be now working with Excel and Airtable and continuing that next Wednesday?
Continuing that through this went through till 6 o'clock today, and then we'll see if it goes through next Wednesday as well. Yeah.
All right. All the best, guys. Enjoy. It is a lot of fun. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you a 5-minute break because that was a lot to digest, right? But what he did for you was gave you an outline of data management, which we've been focused on, frankly, though without the sexy 2021 terminology, we've been focused on since week 1 in lab. There's no question, right? We talked about note taking. That is data management. When we read tables, that is data management. When we look at the front end of all that sexy digital archaeology, that's all built on good data management. So you've all watched that video about fieldwork databases. You know that this is how we get good stuff to plug out to the public. This is how we get good stuff to analyze. So what we're going to do is move into doing this on Excel. I'm going to walk us through, and we are jointly going to look at mock data and use Excel and Airtable to get us through that. Excel is a spreadsheet program. And then we're going to think through how to effectively use Excel, which works for smaller amounts of data. And then we're going to think through how to move that into Airtable, which is it's like a mid-grade. It's not a full-scale relational database because it's a lot of industry is looking at how to appeal to the general user like you guys. And so they're making it sort of database light with the functionality of a database. They have written a lot of code in the back that you don't see that's operating. So when you see it, you're like, I'm not really writing a database, but you are. But that's because they wrote a lot of the shortcuts for you. But this seemed like the program that at this level, Doctors Shende, Dr. Bouchard, and myself all agreed was probably appropriate for where we are as a class to give you some of the basic concepts. You would do different stuff if you were to take computer science with Dr. Shende and Dr. Bouchard, which I recommend if this tickles your fancy, you do. Then your lab, which we'll see how long this takes. This is the first time we've ever done this, and I want you guys to take stuff away from it. So I would like this to be the sort of thing that at 6 o'clock, if you're not finished, you conclude on your own time and come back. But if it takes us really long to get to that stage, I will figure out how to buy us more time. All right. But the goal is to get us all on understanding and to try a new lab out. So with that, I'm giving us a 5-minute break. I want you to review your notes from Dr. Shende to make sure you understand the difference between a spreadsheet and a database. I want you to get a snack. I want you to be in a comfy area where you are happy working because you are going to be pulling out Excel. 5 minutes. I'll see you guys in then.
Dr. Warden,
Yes.
so I tried to download Airtable. I have my workspace open, but when I checked to see that everything went through properly, it says that it can't email my account.
All right, I just started recording again, so I'm going to repeat this for virtue of the recording. Please download off of week 11 on our Class Inquire site. It says week 11 DB sample data. Does everybody have it? All right, when you open it, it will look like 2 tables because it is 2 tables. This is totally bogus. I made it up data. Know that. But we're trying to use concepts that are familiar, student body, numbers of people, gender. Before we start working with archaeological data, where I'm going to be having you deal with wear and surface blackening and slip. Because when we get to the lab, you're going to be dealing with actual archaeological data that I've collected in the field. So you're going to be dealing with real data. Right now, we're dealing with concepts without worrying about learning new data. So the first thing, I should share my screen, I suppose. Do me a favor and open up Excel. And if I can have a show of hands, how many of you have used Excel before? Just raise them and let me see them. All right, so a little over half the class, a good percentage of the class. How many of you feel comfortable in Excel? A different question. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 5. Okay, so we have a huge portion of the class then who's going to be our Excel pros. That means this part should be easy. All right, so let's remind ourselves what Excel looks like. So it has rows and it has columns. The columns, think of it as one data entry, and these are your individual attributes within that data record, right? The columns are. This, the formula bar, is good if you're doing summation or any of the advanced formulas that Excel offers. We are not going to worry about that right now. At the bottom, there is this thing that says sheet 1. Can somebody tell me what that is? Wesley.
So if you're making like different sets of data, you can kind of organize it. So each sheet represents a data set.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And you can add another by clicking this little plus button, and it will create a new sheet. And I can create new sheets until there's a limit. I think it's like 10, 15, something like that. And then you get frustrated and angry, but there is a limit. All right, let's go ahead. Everyone create a second sheet just for the sheer joy of creating a second sheet. All right, let's look at our data then. If you look at your data, you're looking at tabular data, which is good because Excel is all about tables. So whew, that works for us. What is the data expressing? What's up? If you have the opportunity, by the way, to print this or put it on a second screen, that'll be useful to you. I have it over here on a tablet so I can see it while still having Excel open. That would be useful if you could swing it.
It's looking at the makeup of each class at Roanoke College.
Okay. It's looking at the makeup of each class at Roanoke College. Wonderful. Is it period specific? Is it doing any more than that? I think that's absolutely the overarching. Let's see if it's doing more than that.
It's looking at spring.
Okay. So it's looking specifically at gender makeup, right? During the spring semester? Is it only during the spring semester?
Spring and fall.
Spring and fall? Which spring and fall?
2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
This academic year. Perfect. All right. So we're looking at the gender composition of the classes at Roanoke College, spring and fall. Is it doing anything else? Laurel's carried a lot of weight here. Help her out, folks. And Laurel, if you feel like there's something else going on, feel free to pitch in, but you have brought us to a beautiful place.
So it also is talking about the percentages representing groups taking the classes exclusively online.
Good. So it's talking to us about online classes as well. Now that's a little tricky because that's not really represented to us, is it, in the columns? It's conflated and embedded in this table. I point that out to you because making a good Excel sheet is not necessarily cut and pasting a table that you see elsewhere. It's understanding that table, parsing out the attributes in that table, and figuring how to get them on Excel. Hannah, is that your mother again?
It's my boyfriend. It's his day off work.
All right. She just made you laugh so much last time. I'm like, maybe you're getting teased again. All right. So you have to prize out the attributes to figure out how to make a good table. Remember what Dr. Shende said in response to Dakota's question, that the problem with databases, the rookie mistake, but that's still done in industry, is bad design. That means not sitting down and thinking through all of the attributes and the relationships before the designer begins. So this part, the thinking part, is actually the biggest part of the work. All right, so lots of different attributes in there, and it's done by Spring. What other type of data do we have in there?
It looks like the information is coming from 3 sources. At the bottom, it says HHS, LAW, and then Roanoke College.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's like a little key at the bottom. We like keys, except keys always tell us that there's information embedded, right? So HHS and LAW, where are you seeing those in the printout?
They're the ones that pulled the data for each chart.
Mm-hmm. So they're the ones that pulled the data. So assuming that there's some sort of database or they're assembling student records, these are people who collated it. And analyst matters. We know this. We talk about this in this class all the time, don't we? All right. And then at the bottom, it gives you, that's the only place where it's really clear that this is Roanoke College data, right? Fictional, totally arbitrarily made up off the top of my head, not real. Admissions gave me nothing. I made stuff up. But that is the only place where there is any real connection to place in this. And it's just generally understood. So now we've talked about attributes. What are the attributes? Remember, the length, this row is a record, all data that clings together as a record. These are the attributes of that individual record. What are the attributes of our data? Give me
Column headings.
the column headings. Give me one of those, Laurel, that we can start off with.
Class.
Okay, give me another one. More attributes. New voice.
Gender.
Gender. Do I want to write gender? Okay. Do I want to write gender or do I want to write male, female, or non-binary other?
Male,
In the interest of not excluding any of the data, you'd have to say male, female, and non-binary other.
Why?
Otherwise, it's all grouped together, right?
I'm confused. How is writing gender exclusionary instead of having 3 columns? Because theoretically, I could write M, F, and B.
Oh, never mind. I was looking at it wrong.
Yeah. All right, so gender is an attribute. I think Hannah picked that out nicely, but see how that's not an attribute that's actually written clearly in this table. All right, what's another attribute? So instead of breaking it into columns, what this table did was actually took out attributes and separated them into separate columns instead of grouping them into one as it should have, as it would in a database, I should say. This obviously works. We all understand this. What's another attribute?
Would, yeah,
Laurel, Hannah, do you guys want a Rochambeau for it? Can we do that over Zoom?
The year.
The year. Okay. Give me more. And I'm going to ask Hannah and Laurel, who have been so helpful, to take us to this point. Particularly Laurel has done a lot of your heavy lifting, guys. I want to ask them to hold back their brilliant thoughts so that the rest of you can contribute your brilliant thoughts. Do it, Utica.
The percentages of each, I guess, attribute that was online or hybrid.
Okay. Percent online. And that gets us the data that's in brackets, right? Or in parentheses. Good. What other attributes? How about we do? Oh, Wesley, was that going to be you?
Yeah, the semester.
Ah, good. Can you guys do me a favor? Whether you're looking at this on paper or on your computer, can you cross off, highlight, do something to the parts of the text that we have covered? That will help you see what still needs to be covered. So you can cross out semester, you can cross out year, you can cross out all the genders, male, female, non-binary, other, you can cross them out. That's covered by the gender, right? You can cut out that whole column of class. And that includes freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, right? You can, what else can you cross off?
What about location?
I like that, Dakota. I want to work with that, but can I ask us all to finish with this question that I put in front of you? What's the final thing that you can cross off on your sheet that we have covered? Final attribute that Utica gave us. Do it, Utica.
Wait, you can cross off the percentages, and then that would leave you with the number of each student or the number of each class.
So number of students are left for us. Now we can cross that off. Dakota, what did you tell us again?
Location.
Good.
Yeah, I had to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Location. What else is missing? What other attributes belong to these data?
Year. Oh wait, no, that's there. Never mind.
When the data was pulled.
Hmm.
And who pulled it?
Mm-hmm. There we go. That's it. But do you see how we had to look outside of that table for this? How there's actually information tied to this table in this handout. This is how an archaeologist would take notes. You put a header, you put a date, and you only write it once because you are using paper, you're using human eye. That's easy utility. We don't need to write it multiple times. But once I'm putting these in rows of data, if I don't include the location, the data accessed, and who accessed it with every record, I lose it with records. Take this from somebody who did for years not ask people to fill out these things because I'm like, it's a given, I know it's you. And then 5 years later, I didn't have those data. On paper, I have them. I have them all on paper. Because on paper, all I have to do is, all somebody has to do is initial the bottom. But in a spreadsheet, that data has to be attached to every individual record. Thank you, Hannah's boyfriend. All right, so are we happy with the ordering of these things? I mean, those are definitely all the attributes of the data. I figured. Are we happy? Why don't we try? Why don't we try? Proof is in the pudding, right? Everybody, are you doing this with me on Excel? Do me a favor. Enter in, I'm going to even stop sharing. Enter in the first, so spring 2021, enter in all of the freshman records using this format. And so you have, do you all have this format on your own Excels?
Could you put it back up? My
Put
Excel
it
got wiped.
I'm going to put it back up and copy this into your own Excel, because the question is, do we like this order? And does order matter? Legit questions. All right, everyone got it? Raise your hand if you don't, because I'm happy to keep it up longer, but I need to know people need it. Okay. All right, Wesley, are you done? All right, so I'm going to stop the screen share, and please enter all of the freshman information for spring 2021 in your spreadsheet. And I'm going to do the same. When you're done, if you would, I guess, use the raise hand icon. Do we have those? Yeah, I think we do. Yes. Use the raise hand just so I can see that it'll shuffle it and it won't go down versus the emojis, which will. Raise your hand and let me know when you're done with at least the freshmen. But if you have completed the freshmen, go ahead and go to the sophomores and juniors. You're going to have to do it all anyway. I'm missing a couple of hands, so I'm assuming people are still working on the freshman class. Present online. All right. Aiden and Will, I haven't seen hands up from you guys. How are you guys doing? Okay. Oh, I've been waiting on you. So everyone go ahead and unraise your hands and let's see. How did that go? Go ahead, Laurel.
I was actually in the process of lowering my hands.
All
so
right,
I
sure,
did it
sure.
twice.
All right, well, who wants to volunteer and help us out? How did that go? What did you find? Go ahead, Utika.
Good, but I found myself getting really annoyed and wanting to move the columns around, and I decided to wait for your further instruction to do that.
How many of you found yourself deeply annoyed by the structure of the columns? It killed me. I misentered data multiple times. I would put, instead of percent online, I would put the number of students because as I was working through the form, that was the first piece of data I saw. And so those, I actually had to go through and spend time double checking to make sure that I hadn't made that error with every record because I made it once or twice. So it meant I had to troubleshoot everything. So how do we move columns in Excel? Raise your hands if you're comfortable with this and know how to move columns in Excel. Let's do it, shall we? All right, so what order would you like?
I think we should keep class where it is.
Why do you think that, Laurel?
Because then from class, you can just move left to right. I think that's like a good starter place. I think another one would be year as well.
Okay, year should move.
Should be next to class.
Okay.
I agree.
You do year next to class? Do you all agree?
I put year first, semester second, and class third. So that way I didn't have to type spring out 20 times.
All right. We're getting to a pro tip right there. So, all right, let's move year outside and away from the tabular data as written on the form. Because isn't it true that once you get into the form, into the table, you're in the table? And we probably, for the sake of the reader, want to follow the table in our order to minimize error. So what I'm going to do is highlight column C. I'm going to hover over it, and you guys are all doing this with me, right? I'm going to hover over it until I have my little four arrow in black. Do you see that? I'm going to press it with the left mouse key. Excuse me, I'm going to do this again. Come on, baby. And I'm just going to move it over here all the way to A. Oh, cancel. Excuse me. We're going to do it this way. My bad. We're going to go to A and we're going to write insert. Click on insert. So it's a right click on the column A, and then you choose insert. Then you're going to click what's now column D, where your year is. Go to where you have the 4 little black arrows going north, south, east, and west. Click, drag into now empty column A, and there we go. We're going to follow Dakota's advice, and we're going to add another column in front of column A. So again, highlighting A, right-clicking, inserting. Boop. New column. We're going to semester. Waiting until I have my little black north-south arrow. I don't know what it's technically called, but I'm an archaeologist. I think of things like maps. I drag it into now empty column A. I let it go.
How do you get the little draggy cross to come up?
So when you highlight, you put it on the margins, say the right hand or the left hand margin that's highlighted, and it should show up. Does everyone see that? I'm going to delete the same way that I added. I'm going to take my now empty columns. I'm going to highlight them, right click, delete. Highlight, right click, delete. I probably did that too soon because we probably want some more restructuring, but you know, moving on with our lives. Did anyone else have the problem with, everyone okay to this point? Did we get our columns moved? Did anyone else have a problem with the percent online and number of students that I did? All right, I'm seeing a head nod. I'm going to take it as entire validation, and I am moving in the same way so that that is in a much more orderly location. And now this doesn't bother me as much because, as Dakota pointed out, all of your stuff comes from here. All of it is going to have that same record. All of it comes from here. We don't want to have to, and all of this is the same too. It's this stuff that you need to focus on the careful entry. Everyone with me thus far? Tell me go ahead.
My column.
Your column won't move? So let's do it. Can you share your screen?
Let's see.
Oh, I see us because we're in front of your screen. Okay, no, that's me and my screen. It's not you. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so click it, right?
Yep. Go down.
Oh.
Are you on a web browser?
I'm in the application.
So you're actually in Excel.
Yeah.
Are you on a Mac?
Nope.
Why does it look different from mine? Okay. So you should be able to go and hover, highlight, hover on the edges. If it's not letting you do that.
Like that?
No. Go and highlight the column again for me. Let's try another trick. And this will be good for everybody. Highlight our column again. Right click. F. Right click while you're on the F, please.
Okay.
Why does it show up so different? All right, so you're going to hit copy. Now highlight the column where you want it to be.
Where were we moving it to?
You have to create it. So go to A, highlight A, please, and go insert, right click, and then you should be able to just good. And then right click again. Okay, do that. Right click again at A, and you should be able to no, now you're inserting a bunch of columns. So go back to your data, semester, control, that's H, highlight it, copy it again, because Excel is very bad at remembering its copying. Oh, good, it has an insert copied cells. Go back, copy it, copy it, copy it. Hit the copy. Here I'm pointing at my screen as if that helps you, because it doesn't. Copy is right after, of course, perfect. Go to B, highlight it all, right click. Nope, you can't do that. You have to right click the whole column. All right, right click. And you should be able to insert all of our cells, and it's not letting you do that either. Now it's making you, that's inserting a new cell. All right, anyone else have a tip for her? Because this looks different than mine entirely.
Try right-clicking the B.
No, you don't want to copy it. Can you just drag it? Grab it. No. Go highlight I. See how it has two little bars on the side, two little white bars on the side of your green I space? You see that? Can you grab that and drag it? Just drag it. No. And now it's letting you insert copied cells, which is useless. All right, do me a favor. You're going to highlight everything. Hit Control C. That's not what you wanted to do. That was Control V. All right, go over to column C, please. Hit Control V. There we go, done. Excellent. All right. So now that we're all there and we've structured the data differently, tell me other challenges, other things that crept up or that you noticed as you were typing these in.
I noticed the repetitive stuff started to like pop up.
Good. So the repetitive stuff, Excel is trying to help you make fewer typographical errors. That being said, if you keep typing, the likelihood that you're going to make those typographical errors is still pretty huge. All right, good. Dakota, can I ask you a question as well? Because you pointed out that you were tired of typing some of this stuff. So what did you do to get around that?
I just didn't type it. To be honest with you, I like where it says year, it just says 2021, and then to make the separation, I just put 2020 at the end of all the classes, you know, because we got 3 freshman entries with male, female, non-binary, other.
Can you show us this, Dakota?
Not really. I'm using another computer.
Okay.
I could hold it up to the screen.
No, I think we'll roll with it, because how about this? How about I show mine, because I did some of what you did.
Yeah, I also used colors because it's prettier.
I love that, and that's very true. It is.
That way I don't have to think about it. Yeah. Yeah, so when you wrote spring 3 times, I only wrote it once, and it's just kind of encompasses a whole block, and 2021 is only at the top.
Yep. All right, and you see how I gave up. I'm just like, I know everything down here, senior. I know it's all spring. And that's fine if you're thinking about this as text. If it were this, that'd be fine because it exists in perpetuity. But what happens when I do something like data, or if I insert other data, let's say I get the 2020 data in here. Obviously not all of it, and not even correctly typed. But let's say I have some 2020 data in there as well, right? And then maybe for this one, I put in that it's done by law. That's it. That's all usable in its current structure. But one of the things we want to do with Excel is to be able to sort things so that I can answer questions and I can find data. So if I want to sort so that, and I would say that My data has headers. There we go. I'm going to sort by gender, and I want to know what all my male students and all my female students are doing. I can do that, but now see how I have giant holes in the data because I didn't fill it out? This is a mistake we all make. And again, this is a mistake that I made in the field for years and lost the repetitious data because in the current structure it was in, it was totally understandable. But the goal of a computer is to be able to manipulate that structure. So all data have to be entered. So to that end, then, the joys of Control Z. I can go ahead and copy some of this data in Excel. I can take that shortcut of entry because it's exhausting. I'm going to delete these, but you have to fix it immediately. So with Excel, and I want you all to try this, I can highlight the data and see how there's that little green box at the bottom. I can take it and drag it down and it will just copy that word. Now it's harder with numbers because if you do that with 2021, you take it and you drag it down. Oh, it knew because I had repeated it so much, but sometimes it'll make it a sequential number and it'll go 2021, 2022, 2023 automatically. So you have to troubleshoot that. I'm going to take senior. I'm going to drag it down. I'll take Roanoke College and I'm going to drag it down. Date. See how if I just drag it down here, it now gives me different dates. So that trick clearly doesn't work here, but the trick that we worked on with Hannah, Control C, highlight the cells I wanted in, Control V, and highlight it and drag it down. I am now full up and every record is complete. That must be done on Excel. It will sometimes help you autofill like Laurel found. It will often be boring, as Dakota noted. Both true. Has to be done. All right, questions about Excel? Do it, Will.
My percent and my number of students are switched from yours. How do I switch them again?
Highlight a column. So let's say I wanted it right after number of students. Highlight the column that you want to follow your new column. Right click. You'll get a menu, insert, and then you can either highlight the column that you want and Control C and then Control V it into the new column, or you can drag and drop it by getting those little arrows that look like north-south arrows and just moving them.
Okay.
I'll be honest, one of the things that I would probably have done, I would rename this sheet Spring 21, thereby negating the need for any of this, and make this sheet Fall, and I'm getting the option to rename it by clicking on the tab with the right hand mouse key. And I would name this Fall 20. Once I do that, I know Fall 20's data is structured exactly the same. I can Control C my row with all my attribute labels. And you're all doing this with me, correct? I can highlight the new row and Control V it. I don't have to think through data structure. I've already done the hard part. Now it's just the data entry. That being said, data entry, because it's dull, is where the errors happen often. And as Dr. Shende pointed out, an error in capitalization or spacing or missing data all leads to things not being searchable. So we want things to be as clean for our data entry focus possible. Questions on what I did there? All right, as you work through Excel, I do want to note Excel has crap memory for copied data. It remembers it for about a heartbeat. It needs inserting the copied data needs to be your next move. If you copy data and then do 5 things and think you can treat it like Word that will remember copy data until like you have great grandchildren, it's not going to do that. So you need to be like, I'm copying data that I plan on pasting immediately. If you find that you have copied data and you go to paste it and it's not there anymore, just remember, Excel's crap at remembering these things. Go back, copy it again, and then paste it. All right, let's go ahead and do a simple equation on Excel. I want to know how many students were at Roanoke College during spring of 21. That's this table, right? All of these are all of the students that are there in spring of 21 across all the classes and all the genders. So how would I get those data? How would I get that answer?
Sum the column of the number of the students.
Ah, good. Wonderful. I'm hearing an Excel pro there. So Laurel, could you screen share and show us how to do that? And everybody, please do this along. How many of you know this, by the way? Okay, Laurel, share it with us if you would.
So there's something wrong with my shared screen. It won't let me like access it. And since I don't know my username and password for accessing some of the things.
All right. Can you tell me where, can you direct me on my Excel sheet? What should I be doing? And everybody else?
Equals sum.
Where do I put it? What do you want me to highlight? I'm over here now.
You want to highlight the number of the students.
Can you tell me what box number to highlight? Do you want me to do C1, which is where I am right now?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to make sure you do like all of the column and include all the students. And then you're going to want to do Don't you just type sum? Equals sum. So you want to do it in the bar next to FX.
No, if I do it in there, it screws up with that. Let's do it right here, shall we? Let's do it at the bottom. And we're used to thinking about the results of math being at the bottom. At least math is taught differently in grade school than it was in my day, but I was taught long columns of numbers and we're just simple additioning. So let's do it down here. What do you want me to type in this FX bar, or you can type it down here? What do you want me to put? Equals?
Equals sum.
Good. And then do I have to hit anything else or do anything else?
Enter.
It needs to know what cells it needs to read. So you're halfway there. What Laurel's doing is she's giving us the function, the equation that Excel can read, but we need to give it the data range. So parentheses. And then let's highlight some stuff. I wanted all of this. End of parentheses, enter. If Roanoke College was 2,500 students, we'd all be shocked, right? We're our 18 to 2,000 person campus, but this is what our fictive numbers tell us. What if I want, oh, go ahead, Utika.
Sorry, can you repeat that? What you put in the parentheses real quick?
Can you see the function bar up here? So what's cool about this is that the answer will appear here in your table, because in your spreadsheet, they know you want to just look at data. But they'll always tell you how that equation, how those data resulted up here. Okay. What happens if I wanted to find the average percent of students that were in online classes this semester? This is clearly bogus, by the way. This is not an analysis that you would actually do, but because an average percent is just weird structurally. But it will give us a little bit more experiment or a little bit more experience with the functions and with the equation writing. So what do? We hit equals. And notice how if you hit equals and then you hit anything, like I know I'm looking for an average, right? I'm looking for an average. If I hit A, it will give me a list of all of the things it can do, which is stunning in its amount. We're going to just choose average. Okay, let's do that. And see how when I double click it, it even gives me the parenthesis immediately. I'm going to highlight all of this. I'm going to close my parenthesis. I'm going to hit enter. Questions to this point? All right, so you all have seen the strengths of oh, go ahead, Dakota.
Is that averaging the percentage numbers?
Yeah, it's only averaging the percentage. So like I said, this is bogus, Dakota, and is not something you would, not an analysis that you would do in real life, this particular one. I just wanted to give us another experience with the functions and to see the range of equations. So this was more experimentation than good data. But thank you for pointing that out. All right, so at this point, you should have a sense of where Excel is strong and where Excel is weak. If you don't have that sense, this is your moment to be like, Dr. Warden, I ain't got it. All right, so the repetitive nature of the data is actually one of our problems. Imagine if we had 16 semesters worth of data. This would get really, really long and hard to handle. If we did 16 tabs, they'd be hard to cross-reference. We'd have a tremendous amount of repetitive data. And this is what databases are designed for. They're designed to deal with large amounts of data. And so I'm giving you relatively small data sets, but that doesn't mean that, that they're not useful for databasing. And so at this point, let's try using these data and converting them and moving them into a database structure. So if everyone could go to Airtable for me. What you will do on Airtable, you should have a screen that looks pretty much like this. You can see that we've worked on this exercise a lot. So there's a lot of drafts in mine. You will go click on plus where it says add a base. And you should, and say start from scratch. Bogus student data practice. I'm going to name it because if you don't give it a name, you will lose it. Naming of files, naming of digital data is actually more crucial than anybody teaches you. We all treat it as like whatever, but the number of papers I have gotten from you that are labeled paper 1, and I'm like, I now have 10 paper 1s. I can't tell any of them apart. And you have probably written paper 1 for many classes. You couldn't tell it apart in a search. Nomenclature matters. So bogus student data practice, so I don't lose it. And I'm going to make it pink and pretty because why wouldn't I? Like, let's use some color. I'm going to give it an icon because why wouldn't I? All right, this is what we have. Now if you look at your Excel sheets, if you think through the attributes we talked about, you clearly have the core table, but then you have, can you figure out what additional tables you might have, what relationships might be? A hint here is that anything deeply repetitive can end up being its own table.
Class could be its own table.
All right, class can be its own table. There's definitely repetition there. I made a mistake, I think, in deleting some stuff from you and simplifying it. All right. Let's start with the most repetitive stuff, knowing that we don't want to type it all the time. And what tables do is designed to minimize repetition, to maximize efficiency, and to ease our problems with typos. So Laurel suggests class, and class could be done, but class isn't the most repetitious, is it? It could be done. And frankly, Laurel, I think you're right to want to do it, but I'm stepping away from that because we can have like 4 different relational tables, and that's a lot at this level. So I want us to focus on like maybe a couple of points of repetition. So let's see where the heaviest repetition is.
Location.
I mean, gosh, right? I'm gonna give that a color because again, why wouldn't I? I like orange. Don't all jump at once. You all can read. I know you know this. You're just timid. What else is deeply repetitious here?
The date accessed and who accessed it.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? So repetitious it caused pain and boredom and didn't even get typed.
The year.
Anything else?
Semester.
Thank you, Aiden. All right, now notice how I highlighted those as 2 separate colors? Because these are in many ways 2 separate tables, right? One is a table that's all about date, and one is a table about, well, actually, frankly, there might be 3. One is about location, and that there's a lot of embedded stuff that we take for granted with location that we didn't even write down. Did you notice that we lost data from our original sheet when we went to Excel? What data did we lose? I think Laurel looks like she has it.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I was.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You looked like you had it, and I cold called. That was cruel. So we lost data. We lost data in this transition to Excel. What data did we lose? We talked about crossing off everything. There's one thing that didn't get crossed off at all, but because we had so many attributes, it just got missed. This is part of the problem with Excel and with embedded knowledge.
Was it the hybrid classes?
No, I mean, percent online should have perhaps been, oh, wait. Okay, yes. We have type of semester or notes about semester. We totally lost that. And notice I'm putting it here in yellow because it really belongs grouped with this stuff. You all see that italic note? This semester was hybrid. This semester was online. That's clearly important for understanding your data. but it's more tied to the time than it is to the class, right? In short, it's not about you, it's about the pandemic. And so we want to tie that to the space. What else did we lose?
So one thing that we missed is the key to like understand, but would we transfer that over in a database, assuming that we already know what it means?
All right, names of people. I like that question, Laurel. Would we move it over because we already know what it means? This is what a database is trying to save us from. It's trying to save us from ourselves and the assumption that the knowledge we have today is knowledge that we or someone else will have in 6 months. Having written many, many, many Excel charts, because let me tell you, this is the gold standard, it's not the gold standard, but this is common in the field. I have zooarchaeologist friends of mine who are like totally, all they do is keep an Excel list. So this is not abnormal. What you're doing right now is absolutely field practice. But the problem with it is that when you do this or when I take notes by hand, I presuppose a lot because I know it right now. I don't need to write this stuff down. I know who HHS is. Why would I need to write that down? Will I remember in a year? Will I remember in 10? Because archaeological data is long-lived, right? Will Wesley know when he comes in and works with the data? So we need to think about it a little bit like future-proofing your data. Everything you know needs to be in here. And so the names of people, which is that key at the bottom, that needs to be in there somehow. And that's clearly related to that initials column. So I'm just going to color it there. And this is clearly tied to the initials because that's when this person was active. All right, so we missed that. What else did we miss? It's something you all know, and that's why you're ignoring it right now. But do your great-grandparents know? Will your children know? Does anybody not living in Salem know? Utica.
It's the stuff about Roanoke College.
Yeah.
Where it is and what it is.
Mm-hmm. Now we can imagine a world where these data don't just have Roanoke College data. Maybe we're interested in how the pandemic has affected admissions and student selection of online versus in-person courses. Oh, wait, we're really interested in that, by the way. We want to know that. And we're interested, researchers will be interested in looking at different institution types. So saying it's from Roanoke College, if that data stays internal, not a big deal. But if we're moving into broader swatches of institutions, you can't lose those extra bits of data. So we design a database with all the data that we have so that we don't make that mistake that Dr. Shende was talking about of poorly designing a database and then writing whatever analytical tool that sits on top of it, either for visualization, and you've seen that, right? For website design, and relying on that tool to correct the inconsistencies that are in here. So we're going to write that in. So notice then that we have 4 tables. I have color coded them for your ease. Everyone got that? So how do I create a table in Airtable? All right, so this is our primary table. Or it's our first table. It's not actually our primary table. And I'm going to work with the stuff that's not primary. In other words, I'm going to work with the stuff that has a relationship to the core grid table, but it needs to sort of be designed elsewhere so that I can plug it into that core table. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm going to start with semester. And I'm just going to rename the table because you know what? It is good policy to make sure you are labeled at all times. Did you all see how I did that? You're all doing this with me, correct? So what Airtable allows you to do, it looks a lot like a spreadsheet, and it's really a hybrid. It's allowing us to do some relational database things, while at the same time giving us spreadsheet style functionality, because most people are more familiar with spreadsheet design than anything than database design. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I am going to put I'm going to customize field type. So hit the downward arrow, customize field type. What's the first table that we have coded in yellow on Excel? It's semester. So what's the first attribute in semester?
The year.
Mm-hmm. Semester and year. So we're going to customize field type. We're going to write semester, and we're going to let it be a single line text. Done. What's the other thing I need? Actually, I'll wait till you are all done with that. All right, everybody got that? All right. Do me a favor. I'm going to pause a lot waiting for you to do it, but then I'm going to, in class, I would just ask you to look at me and, you know, we could have like a human moment, but I will need you to give me some visual signal or some verbal signal when you're done, so I know that I can move on and we're not all just sitting here staring at a screen. All right, what's the second attribute for this table?
Year?
All right, good. Customize full field type. Year, do I want it to be long text? What's a year? It's short, and is it a number? I can start typing in this field and it'll tell me what options I have. So number. It does not need to be a decimal because that would be crazy. 2021.0. No, dear God, no. All right, and then we're going to save that. Now, and I don't need these. So we can go ahead and click down, delete that field, click down, delete that field. Wonderful. Now there is one problem here. For a table to function, it needs to have a unique identifier. Every row must have a unique identifier. That's to allow the computer to find things easily. Semester, spring, fall, they're both 2021. What if I added to this? Which logically we're building something that's to be added to, right? I would probably add fall of 2021. Do I have, oh, it's spring of 2020, fall of 2020, excuse me. Do I have a unique identifier here? No. All right, so this is one of the challenges with database structure. You can't just simply replicate the tables that you found on Excel. You have to make sure that there is something unique for each of those tables, a unique identifier. So we're going to try to do this again, shall we? No, before I do, actually note, see how this semester has there's this long, hard line between this column and the others. This is a frozen column. If you click the down arrow and you hit customize field type, see how there's a lock on it? Can you read that text? All right, so this is our primary field, and it's where the non-replicated data must be. In a case where we actually have replicated data, we can't use that as our primary field. We're going to need to create a magical new primary field, just like Dr. Shende did when he wrote day 1, June 1st, day 2, June 2nd. There's a lot of repetition in June, right? But there's none in 1, 2, 3. So why don't we just do this as ID? And we have to create some sort of unique ID. You can do this in one of two ways. You can create a unique ID, and that's what the college does. When you see SP20 versus FA21, that's your unique ID. Because with that combination of semester and year in one letter, it will always be unique. The other way you can do it is to choose auto number, and it will automatically just create a series of numbers for each record. So you'll have record 1, record 2, record 3. That makes sense to everybody. Those are your two options. For ID, I'm actually going to go ahead and create a new ID just simply because I know that the college has these. Why are we not working with me? Come on, baby. Okay, well, that's fine. Spring 21. For some reason, it doesn't like me right now. That's okay. I don't like it very much. We're fine. Fall 20. And this would be fall 21, which we're not going to use, but it can exist. Then I'm going to have to enter a new semester record, and that will be single line text. And that will spell that out for anyone who doesn't understand my code, which is me at the beginning of every semester. You'd think teaching here for years, I would understand. I do not always. And so now we have a unique ID that will never be repeated. All right. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to do this. We're going to add a new table. We have 4 tables total, right? Add, create empty table. What table should this be? Let's leave the big bulky matrix where all the relationships are till the end. So what are the 2 tables that we need that have highly repetitive data? I hope you've all made this chart with me as we did it. That's been the goal, that you work with Excel and that I'm not just creating for you, because wait till we get to the lab. You have to do all of this same stuff all over again. So what are the other 2 tables cleverly highlighted in color for you?
Location.
All right, so location, and what's your other table?
The date and who accessed it.
All right, so we'll call it personnel. So table 2 is going to be location, which I have stopped writing vowels because I take notes so much. Please do not use abbreviations you do not understand. Do not replicate other people's abbreviations. In fact, I should not do this in general because the whole point of a database is to be widely understood. So create an empty table, and this is personnel. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm going to turn off my camera and give you 10 minutes to create those tables yourself. If you're back and if you do it in less than 10 minutes, please come back, because then we need to move on and we can use all of our time. But if you need the full 10, that's totally cool. All right, I'll see you in 10. All right, so go ahead and stop your videos if you'd like.
Dr. Warden, are you there?
I am, in fact. What's up?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm so confused.
All right, let's do it. Can you share your screen?
No, I'm on another computer.
Yes.
So.
Can
but I
you
think
log on through that computer?
It's unlikely. I'm conceptually confused.
Okay, talk to me.
We're copying Excel data, the repetitive Excel data, into the second table. Is that correct?
Mm.
I'm not even really sure what I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay, let's do it. How many other people are confused on this? Okay, let's do it. Good. All right. I'm sharing. We're just doing it together. Let's just do it together. Hold on. Let me share the screen. All right. So we are dealing with the repetitive data because we just don't want to have to do this again. By the way, I'm going to think about not just the stuff from we're not just dealing with the spring 21 data. We are still dealing with the fall 20. We didn't bother typing it in together because I felt like you had seen those skills. But with this database, it's important to remember there's 50% of the data that we chose to ignore in Excel. Everyone with me to this point? Cool. All right, so let's deal with location first. There are 3 attributes in location: name of college, location of college, and the type of institution. So if we go to this table right here, name is actually going to work well for us as a unique identifier. There are no other Roanoke colleges. I hope. I want them to send me a paycheck as well, if there is. So we're going to just go, I'm going to rename it because I like transparency, name of college, or name of institution, because not everybody's a college. Some people are universities. I know I need location of college. And so do you all see what I'm doing here? I'm sorry. I'm doing this as if it's just, I'm just doing it without walking through it. I'm going to the down arrow, getting my little handy. I'm right clicking on my little handy, and please do this with me. I'm doing customize field type. I don't want notes. What I want is location. Now, I could break this up into city and state. That would probably be smarter. So let's do that. Because what if this became about 50 colleges and I only wanted to look at Virginia? If I group those, if I have Salem, Virginia, Blacksburg, Virginia, Radford, Virginia, I'm not actually going to be able to search for Virginia very easily, right? So let's make this a city, and it doesn't need to be a long text, does it? So I'm going to go to the down arrow, and I'm going to do a single line text.
I have a question.
Please.
How does the default text box help us? What does that do?
That means if you're sure that your data in general usually is, I have a really, it usually is none. I can't tell you how much data I never bothered entering because there was no data. You're going to see this. It's like, I just don't have any blackening visible on that shirt. There's none. And so you could do a default entry that says none, so that maybe you don't have to type it again, if you're going to see that a lot. I'm not going to worry about that right now, though. I want to worry more about the structuring of our attributes, but that's a good question, and it will minimize some of your some drama in some ways. All right, I don't need attachments. Customize field type. What do I need? City and?
State.
Perfect. State. Hit the down arrow with my left mouse click. Single line text is also our friend here. Save. I don't need status. What's the other attribute that we said we needed? On the Excel spreadsheet. You all have that Excel spreadsheet, so use it. That's why we did it first. It helps us think through some of these issues.
Is it type of institution?
Brilliant, yes. So forget status, screw you status, type of institution. Single select, what an interesting option it's giving me. That's just by accident, but that's nice because what that will do is give you a drop-down list of options. Types of institutions, there are a few. There's four-year liberal arts, which is us, obviously. But there's also public university. There's for-profit college, which is yucky, but exists. And there's, you know, private four-year universities. I have no idea why that went off. So now what that has done is it will give me a drop-down box every time I'm typing something in. So let's try this. Name of institution. Let's enter some data, friends. So what data should I enter here? What is the name of the institution?
Roanoke College.
Ooh, thank you. What city are we in? Also helpfully written down on the paper.
Salem.
Thank you. State?
Virginia.
Thank you. Now, this is going to be rough. I spelled it out, so we're going to have to hope people always spell it out. I would probably, maybe even, if I were going hardcore, I'd create a drop-down list of this. You could table this. Type of institution. Now I can click on this little drop-down arrow and just choose it. And that makes sure that there's not going to be spelling inconsistencies. All right, everyone good with the location. Oh, that's the only piece of data we have now, but we're designing this to build out. And so we might get data from, actually, we might get data from Hollins, which you can see I'm a messy typer right now. And are they technically in Roanoke? Is Hollins Roanoke or Virginia? We're gonna let it be Roanoke today. And maybe I want Virginia Tech. Now these are fictive, but I want you to see why that table is necessary, even though we only have one piece of data. All right, everyone happy with this table?
Wait, Dr. Warden, how do you get the drop-down arrow again for the type of institution?
Good. So let's go here so these are all your headers, right? These are your different attributes. If I click on this arrow and it's a left click, customize field type, left click, type of institution, and then it gives me this drop-down box. I have chosen single select. That means that there's gonna be a drop-down list and the user may only select one of them. And then I saved it. Actually, let me do that again, Wesley, because what I didn't say is it automatically gave me options because it kind of pre-filled things. But if I were to choose single select immediately by itself, you have to enter all of the options down here. Okay. All right, if we're all good with location, let's go to personnel. Do we have a unique key for personnel? A primary field that is not repeated?
The date accessed is the same for all of it.
All right, so that can't be our primary field because there's repetition there. Is there anything where there's no repetition? Hannah, you're smiling. Any ideas? No? What about initials? Is there repetition in those initials? This is part of why we like initials so much, because they are small and focused, but they also give you a huge amount of data. Single line text, save that bad boy. And then here, do I want the whole name or do I want to split to last and first? All right, talk to me, guys. You're being really timid today, and that's not like you. So what's going on? Is this just, it's very different. Amber looks like all hope is lost. Think about every time you fill out forms. Do you treat names as a unit?
They usually split it up.
Let's do that as well, because that's going to make it more searchable, right? And if I have a problematic name in that I professionally always use Leslie Ann Warden, but you would never, like, people never call me Leslie Ann. When they do, I know they don't know me. And so they might be on campus. Sometimes people call me Leslie Warden and drop the Ann. And so if you're searching for Leslie Warden, but what's typed in is Leslie Ann Warden, you're not going to find me. So what we need to do is last name, which will make it easier to find people because we can search by a smaller piece of data. And let's do first name. So again, clicking on the drop down arrow, customize field type, first and middle name. And this doesn't need to be attachment, single line text, save. And then I'm going to get rid of this status. Oh, no. What's the other attribute that I need?
Date accessed, right?
Wonderful. And I don't want that to be single select, but I would like that to maybe be, I'm going to write in this find a field type, I'm going to write DAT, and it gives me a date option. Let's do that. And then it lets me choose how I date it, which is good. I work with a lot of Europeans, and so I like to make sure my month is spelled out so everyone understands. That's just me. You might like different nomenclature. That's fine. Choose a format, save. Wonderful. Let's enter this. American. Okay. And then I have Sharid Hazem Hilmi. And then February 1. Did everyone enter that okay on their own computers? This is really important for you to have this database because you are going to go back and refer to it because it's very similarly structured to what you're going to be doing in your lab. And it's very deliberate. I structured these data similarly so that the steps you're going through to create the Excel and the steps you're going through to create the base are going to be really similar between this exercise and the actual lab. All right, we have had a long day at the computer. So we're going to do our fourth database and get the attributes written in the fields, but we're not going to populate it. We're going to take a break after we do that. So truck with me, guys, and then we'll have a 15, 20-ish minute break because you all need to get off the computer a little bit, as do I, and you need to get a snack and move and do the things. So let's power through this. Let's add a new database, or add a new table, excuse me, create an empty table. And this is our student data, correct? This is actually the primary data that we're interested in. And if we go back to our Excel chart where we did all of our thinking already, that data looks like this. And we can notice that there's repetition here. Laurel pointed that out to us. There's repetition here. We could more subtable it. We could. We're not going to because there's a limit to how far we need to go with this exercise. And I'm going to show you how we're going to handle that. But there's no independent key, right? No primary field here that is totally unique. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our new primary field. We're going to customize field type. What primary field are we going to do you think? Why don't we do a record number? And let's go ahead and auto number it. We won't have to think about it now. And each entry will have a unique primary field, primary key. It could just as easily be A, B, or C, just like Dr. Shende talked about with the days and with the cities. All right, saving it. Oh, look at that. It already started to auto number. Thank you, Airtable, for thinking that one through for me. All right. Read me the next attribute off of your Excel sheet.
Class.
Class. All right. So customize field type, class. Now we don't need long text for that, right? Is there a field type you saw that was clever and that might actually help you here?
Single select.
There we go. Thank you. So let's try that. So again, I'm clicking the down arrow and now I'm typing in here single line text, single select. Why it does not like me today. Single select. There you go, friends. I'm going to add an option. What should be my first drop down box option? I saw Laurel say it, though her mic was off. What's my second one?
Sophomore.
Junior.
Yep.
And senior.
Perfect. Don't you like it when it's easy? Like when you can just flow and be like, oh, I get that. That's good. That's easy. I'm going to save that bad boy. What's the next attribute?
Gender.
Wonderful. Now, again, as Laurel pointed out to us, these should probably be separate tables, but we're working in something that gives us different options, that creates these drop-down lists. And that's where it's hybriding, right? That's where it's becoming a tool that's a little bit more usable for the general public as well. All right, does gender want to be an attachment field? That's Crazy Town, right? What kind of field do we want it to be?
Single select.
Wonderful. Let's do single select. And we're doing, actually, it will put it in alphabetical order for me. So I'll type it male, female, and non-binary other. All right, we're going to save that bad boy. And what else do we have? It's all in your Excel sheets. Wesley, what else do we have, sir?
Sorry, number of students.
Thank you, sir. Number of students. And what kind of field should that be? Do we want that to be a single select? Do we want that to be a single line text?
Couldn't we just put it in number?
Absolutely. So I'm going to click that little down arrow. It will let me search for a field type. I'm going to hit N, U, M, and there's number. Click it. I don't need a decimal because there's no percentage in terms of student, or excuse me, it's not that there's no percentage, is that I don't get half a student. That's Crazy Town. And then we'll save. All right. And then do I need another attribute? So I'm going to hit the plus. All right. And that other attribute is?
The percent online.
And I can find a field type that is actually percent. Good. All right, now this is all wonderful. I mean, it's individual. Now we have the table, but it has no relationships to these other tables. All four tables exist in like the void, unrelated to each other. We need to create the relationships. So we're going to do that at the end here by creating, I'm going to hit the plus. You're all hitting the plus with me. I'm going to choose link to another record. and it asks me which table I want to go to. I want to go to semester. Allow linking to multiple row records, fine, create field. And I want to just go ahead and go to the ID. Add one field. Now Airtable does this very annoying thing where it will create both this, which is the important box, and then this, which is their search box. Dr. Shende, Dr. Bouchard, and I could not figure out why they did that. So I am going to ask you to highlight in your notes, which you're dutifully taking right now, that it will create two columns. Don't freak out. Only pay attention to the column that doesn't say, that doesn't have, the crazy little search and this, okay? Now, we need to link to another record. We need to link to location. So, and the field name on this, I'm going to say college. I'm going to create the field, and that's the name of institution. The cool thing about this is that you can mine it for a lot of data, right? Because this one table will create relationships that actually embed data in them.
Could you do the steps again?
Yep, we have one more to do, so let's do it. I'm going to click the plus button. I will go down to this first option that we've been frankly ignoring, link to another record. I'm going to click it. Now I've already linked to semester. I've already linked to location. I'm going to link here to personnel. What am I doing? I'm going to get name of analyst.
Dr. Warden, when I click the plus button, the first option it gives me is CBS file, and it doesn't actually give me an opportunity to link to a different thing.
So let me cancel. Go ahead and share, Elizabeth. Let me stop.
Sure. I think this is the one that I need to share. Yep. See? I clicked that and it does this.
That's because you're creating a table versus a attribute within a table.
Oh, sorry. Right. So what I'm going to need to do is
you're going to need to. So why is this big add an app? Can you hit the X for, do me a favor.
Oh, there
you see
it
I
is.
get this crazy white box over
so
here?
much better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You see that plus button right here after %online?
Oh, that. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see it before. I appreciate it.
Yep. No, that's why I'm delighted. This is actually, like I said, the 1 week I'm delighted we're online because we can share each other our screens and make it happen. All right, so I'm going to share mine again, and we're going to finish going through our final steps. So I'm going to click on plus. My field name in this case, I'm looking for analyst. I'm going to link to another record, and I'm going to do it from personnel, which is this tab right here, that table that we've already created with everyone's names. I'll create the field. Why don't I just use the initials? Just create the relationship real easy. I'm going to add the field, and it will now show up in this box. So when you go through to write it then, what we will do is the first entry will be class, and I will hit this drop down arrow, freshman, gender, male, number of students, 260. What's the % online?
$50.
50, thank you. What semester are we doing? Can you tell me what semester this is?
Spring 2021.
Thank you. So I'm going to click the plus button here. It will give me the records that are in that existing table, spring 2021. See how it just fills this in? I couldn't tell you why it's doing that. We were not able to find the answer, but what I know I can do is drag and drop this column to the end where I'm not looking at it. All right, college is Roanoke. Again, I Couldn't tell you why it's doing that. We have no answer. And then the analyst, in this case, was Hazel. And I'm done. I don't have to do any of that crazy retyping, and all of the information that's in these tables is now embedded in that other table. And it tells you here where it's appearing in the student table. Record 1 has this data. Should note also that we forgot to add the notes. That was my bad. Notes, single line text, create field, and this was hybrid online and inshallah in person. All right. Do you guys all have this database saved on your Airtable? Are there any questions for me?
Does it save automatically?
Yes, thank God. That's the thing that databases often do nowadays. They just automatically save. Other questions?
So if it automatically saves, if I just X out of this page, when I like log back in, this will be there? Okay, just making sure.
You might want to, well, I mean, we'll all try it right now so you can have some confidence of having lived through it once. Any other questions? All right, so your lab is essentially doing this. There is an analysis piece that your lab asks you to do, but I think what we'll do is we'll walk through that all together on Wednesday. Instead, I want to focus on getting you to the point where you are structuring your Excel sheets and structuring your base, and then we'll deal with querying in class together on Wednesday. All right, so know that when you read the questions in your lab. Let's take a 20-minute break. Does that sound good? Get a snack, get some movement, get outside, and come back at 5:05. What I will do is I will put you in pairs to work on the lab together. You can download during the break the lab. It's lab 8. There are 2 pieces of it that are up there to be downloaded. All right, 20 minutes. Enjoy your break. I'll see you guys shortly. Welcome back. Hey guys. So I did some thinking in addition to my snacking during our break. And I think what I'm going to do is I am changing our lab structure a little bit, just a tiny bit, in that I'm getting rid of the photogrammetry lab. It's another digital lab and it's more software to navigate and whatnot. And I'm getting rid of it in favor of letting this lab count for 2 labs to honor the time that it's going to take and to also give us a little bit more time. I will score it in 2 ways then as for lab 8 and lab 9 score. For lab 8 score, I will score it based on your Excel and Airtable structure, that thinking through how to structure and build something. For lab 9, I will score you on analysis, which is a piece we haven't even talked about today. So it seems best to actually think about that as a separate piece and a separate score. So that means that we're going to be doing 2 DigiLabs back to back. This week and next week will be in DigiSpace. But then the last 2 weeks of class will be back together in real life and in real time. Week 13 is our archaeological survey. So we're going to be a tiny bit out of step with some of the materials of this class, but it's just a hybrid semester and it's kind of how it ended up working. Especially without a spring break, which throws everything off, as I'm sure we're all feeling right now. All right, so with that, Laurel, was this going to be a question? You looked like a woman with a question, or at least words.
Yes, I do. So just to clarify, this is going to count for 2 labs. So it's going to be for next week's lab. So does that change the due date on this lab?
Good question. So if you go, I just uploaded a form, lab 8 through 9 submission, and it clarifies, I believe it clarifies all of that. It will be due at the end of week 9. It'll be due as a week 9 lab. So you'll hold it until then. So you'll have more time to work on it. All right. My goal, as you know, is to get you to learn process. And sometimes it takes time. And I think this one's going to take time. So I want you to have that time. All right. Did you guys download the lab 8 stuff? I'm going to give, who needs some time to read through the actual lab 8 archaeological databases? All right. So let me give you a couple of minutes to go ahead and read through that. And let's do me a favor. I need you to hit the raise hand button. And Will, I'm looking at you. I need you to hit the raise hand button when you're done so I know and I don't keep nagging you. I want you to take the time you need, but I would like to be able to lecture us as well. So.
I'm sorry, but I've never used the raised hand thing. Where can you find that?
Good question. So if you go to participants, I believe it's in I don't actually have it because I'm the host of this. I don't get to raise my hand. I believe it's under participants and then the 3 dots. Is it there for everybody? Okay.
All right, I can see it. Thank you.
No problem. All right, yeah, just give me the raised hand when you're done, just so I know you're done. You can turn off your screens actually too, so you don't have to have me stare at you while you're doing this. Read, do not be stared at. All right, it looks like I have most folks having finished their reading. So we can turn our cameras back on. This is an excellent moment should you have any questions about the assignment itself. And this is real. Oh, please, Utica.
Sorry. Okay. So we are taking the data from the other PDF that you gave us and like rewriting it into our own Excel sheet, not copying it directly.
Yeah, I want you to think about it just like this friend right here. Remember how Hannah said, when we were talking about attributes, and Hannah said gender, except if you looked at that table, gender wasn't written in so many words there, even though gender's obviously there, right? It's there in three different ways, but it's there. So you're going to have to think through how to structure your table. You're going to have to think through the many different attributes that are on here, and note that this sheet is broadly similar to this sheet. What I did, these are a much cleaner version. I was going to give you originally the handwritten version, and then like, that's cruel. Don't do that. Type it up. So you have the cleaner version, but this is generally what my data sheets look like in the field. This is exactly what I'm doing in the field. And so you have that with minimal cleanup. And then I went, so that's existed since 2014. And so when I wrote this, I wrote it to be similar in structure to that. So you would have had to practice looking through it one time before. So it's more complex, unquestionably. There's more data there. But at the same time, you do see how there's stuff that's going to have to be repeated in an Excel sheet quite often that is taken for granted on paper. I only write it once because it's one sheet of paper. Why would I write it 15 times on one sheet of paper? Simply by virtue of being on the same paper, the relationship is clear. But that won't be true in an Excel format. And it won't be true in Airtable. You're going to have to think through tabling. I don't think that's actually the verb I'm supposed to use, but Dr. Shende isn't here to call me out, so we're going to let it roll. Other questions? Did you pull up the data itself then? So I talked you through how that data is collected and roughly what we're doing and why. Do you have questions about the first sheet from Locus 47501 and K1? All right, let's do this. Lab is going to end at 5:50. At 5:50, you're welcome to leave. 6 o'clock, we're all leaving, right? And we'll do that this way as we all normally do. Remember that in order to do lab 9, which is the analysis piece, you're really going to have a lot of the structure prepared for lab 8. You're going to have already done the structure for the Excel. You're going to already have done the structure for the Airtable and do most of the data entry. So I want you to aim to have that completed by next week, though you'll be turning the whole package into me on the 5th. But if you don't have that prepared for next week, I can't help you get to the next stage, and you have shot yourself in the foot for getting any points for both labs, okay? So what we're gonna do then in our brave Zoom world, I have, I do have 9 of you. So we are going to have 4 rooms. So we're going to have 3 pairs and 1 triplet. Let me see what Zoom is doing. Elizabeth, Hannah, Laurel, have you worked together a lot before? Trying to keep people shuffled. Aiden, Will, a lot of work together before? Yeah. No? Amber, Dakota? Yes, Laurel.
I was looking over the data sheet and I was wondering what blackening meant.
So blackening is the presence of blackened patches on the exterior or interior of a sherd. And they normally come from either exterior use in cooking, most frequently, though not always. And on the interior, they're residue traces from cooking as well, but it's cooking of food. So it's like when fats settle in and they become black. And so what we're doing is tracing the presence of blackening. Does it exist? So none is an option. Is it on the interior of the sherd? Because the sherd is a piece of pot. You guys have all been dealing with pottery already, and you know that there's an interior and exterior, and that they are different, right? The interior comes into contact with food and such. The exterior comes into more contact with human hands and flames and things like that. So they're going to have different residue, different use traces. So that's why we're going to look at interior, exterior, and in some cases, well, blackening on both surfaces, on interior and exterior. Other questions about the data?
I noticed that there is just one of the columns says none.
Yep. Blackening.
Okay, thank you.
Absent. And so you'll see that blackening is written as absent, but when we get to surface treatment, unslipped is no surface treatment, is no slip. So there's a none in there as well, but we have a different structure for surface treatment than we do for blackening in terms of how that table is laid out. That should feel a little familiar, right? Like I said, I did try to lay out the tables similarly enough so that you could see some of the tricks inherent in it. Any other questions? All right, these are going to be your groups for this portion, the layout portion. I will shuffle you again when it comes to the analysis portion. I think I might keep you in the same place, but right now for all of the layout, it's a collaborative thing. Feel free to work collaboratively. You will each need to turn in your own independent work though. So you are creating separate bases and separate Excel charts. I have given you on Inquire a guideline on how those will be turned in. But that's jumping ahead of the boat a little bit. I'm going to open your breakout rooms. You can come and grab me. I'm going to hang out in this main room and I am here for you. I'm probably going to be twiddling my thumbs and reading news and getting depressed. So feel free to come back in, grab me, ask a question. I am here to help you. Work on your Excel sheet first, because as that's how the assignment is formatted, and B, it helps you think through the tables that you will need for Airtable. All right, and remember, you're not just laying out, you're going to have to do all the data entry as well. All right, guys, good luck.